Welcome to Canada's History Podcast. My name is Julie Richards, and I am this year's Nobleman Scholar at Canada's History Society. Over the past month, it has been my pleasure to chat with the 2021 Governor General's History Award Excellence in Teaching shortlist. Listen in as the teachers and I discuss their wonderful and inspiring projects, teaching during the pandemic, and how to keep students engaged in history. Thank you for joining us today, and welcome to Teaching Canada's History Podcast. So let's dive right in. Can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about your classroom or where you teach?
Sure. This sounds great. Happy to be joining you today. My name is Michel Blades and I am a teacher at the Ranch Learning Centre out of a classroom just outside of Lamont, Alberta. Our classroom is a very unique environment. That was created a few years ago. All of our students are boys that live in government care. And there started to be a bit of a trend that the boys that all are residents of a group home just outside of Lamont, Alberta, would attend school within the town of Lamont. But they all came with very unique considerations. Some of them were healing from addictions, some from abuse, some were offenders of abuse, some had brain injury, heightened emotional states, and they didn't often fit very successfully into the high school or the junior high environment. And the same pressures kept happening over and over for them, that they would be getting into trouble. They would be heading to the office and they would be incurring suspensions or even marching towards being expelled for just escalating behaviors. And none of this was their fault. They came into government care for various numbers of reasons, and the system wasn't working for them. So Elk Island Public Schools partnered with Alberta Education and Corrections Services Canada to create our classroom. It is an EPI program, an education placement in an institution. So we do have our classroom on site at a rural group home, and we are three teachers. We're three teachers in one classroom for about anywhere from 10 to 15 students. We've been as low as 2 or 3, and then the program just rebuilds itself again. And all of our students come from various locations all over Western and Northern Canada. So we've had students as far as way up north in Yellowknife join our program, and we have had students from British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and I think that's as far as we've gone so far. But we are, like I said, 3 teachers that are on site for about 10 students. And within this program, we seek to reconnect our students to Indigenous culture, land-based teachings, and basically helping them navigate their journey through government care as young as grade 5 and all the way up to grade 12. Just helping them to find themselves, hopefully keep contact and reconnect with their family, or learning their language, various other aspects.
Wow, that sounds like a very impressive facility and program, and very important work as well. Could you go into more detail about your project and kind of how it connects?
Yeah, for sure. The project is called Keeping Tobacco Sacred, and where it can be a very specific explained project, it also very much crosses over into so many other areas of the work that we do. Keeping Tobacco Sacred started when I actually was doing my master's work down at the University of Calgary, and the first cohort, that program that I took down there, was an Indigenous education, a call to action cohort. And one of my instructors, Yvonne Poitras-Pratt, at the end of our 2 weeks of intense work, she gifted each one of us with a single tobacco plant that her and her husband actually grow at home. And I carried my tobacco plant from Calgary to Edmonton, and I have a balcony garden. I fostered it the best I could. And if anybody has grown tobacco before, it's a bit of an awkward plant. It grows however it wants to grow, and most likely should be in the ground, but mine was potted, and it grows into flowers, and the beautiful yellow flowers eventually turn into seed pods. And once you have a seed pod, you have hundreds of seeds. And so of course, I carried these plants into September into my classroom and continued on with the growing. And we are fortunate enough also in our classroom to have tower gardens. And tower gardens are an aeroponic system of growing where you have a water tub that is attached to a tower, and the water is carried up the tower to water plants that are growing out of little shelves in the tower. And we continued this project along. And the group of students that we had that year were very enthusiastic about growing and learning about different things that you can do with plants and sustainability and growing food and different aspects. So we decided to also incorporate medicines and what is important from the land that has come through natural law and the teachings of elders for protocols and things that will take these students into ceremony in a good way. So we sort of crossed over all of this work into science, of course, learning about plants, learning about growing plants, the different stages of growing, and with this becomes success in growing and failure in growing, and what happens and what can you do, as well as what trauma looks like on plants, just as much as we feel it as humans. And all of this work came into be this project, and turning it back into the health benefits of what the plant of tobacco is to people versus what it is in society today, and that often comes in the form of cigarettes. Um, we also saw a need a few years ago. I noticed that in ceremony, especially feast, if young boys were asked to help out with feast, they were given an offering of tobacco that was in the form of a cigarette. And I watched them. I watched them kind of play in their mind with what they were going to do with this, whether they were going to break off the filter and go return the tobacco to the earth, or if they were going to sneak off and smoke it. And I knew that within the school system, there had to be a better way of making these offerings and the mentality behind it. And also within this, that we saw an ease of how elders were being asked for prayers for very heavy things. Our whole system is burdened right now with the legacy of the genocidal assimilation of people through residential schools. And elders are being asked for prayers for such heavy things that elders are getting tired. And the growing of tobacco slows this process down because you have a whole season of growing before your plant is matured enough that you can cure the leaves, you can dry the leaves, and you can make it into an offering. So those are the other thoughts that we help the students make connections to. Um, just so there's those ideas of, you don't just grab some cigarettes off the shelf and say, hey, pray for me for this, I need this, I'm hurting, when the positive energy that you carry needs to go into every bit of growing a plant, and how long it takes, a growing season. And of course, in our lands, we are on Treaty 6 land, also known as Alberta. Our growing season is very different. If you want to grow outside, you grow from maybe April if we're lucky, maybe October if we're lucky. And so we did have to move our growing seasons inside as well. We did have the plants in the towers, we had the plants in pots, but also that fostered a new outlook for the boys, that they needed to be at school every day. They needed to make sure the plants were watered every day, or at least observing what was going on with them if there was something happening. if we needed to make changes, or like I said, success and failure and growing as well.
That's really amazing. Reading about your project, it really came through how important this work is and how much people participating in the project really get from it. You said that the when you started, it was the group of boys were really interested in the plant specifically. Do you think that you'll continue this project, or is it kind of specific to this one group?
No, for sure. We have continued it along, and it does flourish, and it does settle a little bit. We have sort of branched out. We do grow other things, lettuce, Swiss chard, other things that we often have salad days at school. So just having that visual every day of something growing, and like I said, the attachment to it. If oftentimes kids that are struggling with emotional regulation are struggling with a love for themselves. And so finding that connection back to loving yourself and putting that into loving something else, whether it is a person, animal, or a plant, and being able to come to school today to see something that sort of anticipates plants can't talk, they do have energy frequency, but something that is expecting you to be there every day. And actually, one of the other important parts of our classroom is we do have 3 classroom cats that come every day. So it's the same mindset with the cats that come to school every day, is that if you don't feel you can love yourself or be nice or loving to other humans today, that possibly you can do that to an animal or a plant. And it is ongoing. We do continue this work. And it, like I said, it's important to be able to connect to things that sometimes the system has disconnected for a lot of these students. They don't know sometimes where they can smudge, where they can have, they even can ask to smudge, or connected to pieces of their life that they're very quiet about. And sometimes it takes weeks, months, or even years. Within this classroom, we have had students I was fortunate enough to teach one student for 6 years. So you see that student through their ups and downs. And sometimes it takes weeks, months, years for them to speak of, all of a sudden, I want to learn Cree. My family speaks Cree. Well, we didn't know that 6 months ago. We didn't know that a year ago, but now they feel confident that they can speak of these things. And it's just helping them feel like they have somewhere to be, a belonging, and that they can bring out pieces of their identity that maybe the system isn't supporting right now. And uh, this project is actually launching a bunch of other little projects that I think have to do with, we do have a boy that's a powwow dancer, and he brought his regalia that he had made himself um, to our classroom, and that we're going to be helping him to make more pieces of it. We also we do bucket drumming, which is marching towards making. We're going to be making hand drums and a powwow drum this year. And some of these boys have never had the opportunity to do these things before, even in their own family, even though it's a part of their own family. So just the confidence that small pieces can bring, such as growing a plant, such as growing a medicine that is used in ceremony.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds, it's, I feel like I keep repeating myself. It all sounds so amazing and so profound, and yeah, truly just really important to be instilling these qualities in these students. Um, you have sort of talked about this, but was there a specific inspiration or that brought about this project?
Yes and no. I think, if I think back, we were reading the novel Fatty Legs by Margaret Pokiak Fenton. And if you know the book, it is the true life account of Margaret as she was taken to a residential school up in northern Canada. And the gift that that book gave our classroom is, um, within that book, she has placed actual photographs, historical photographs of herself and her family, as at that time when she was taken to or she decided to go to residential school, and the journey she made back and forth when she wanted to go back to see her family. And the topics and the conversation that came out of doing that book um, really helped our students to come to a realization that it's okay to not be happy about living in government care. Um, a lot of times emotions get really suppressed, and it's okay to be able to take a look at the system from the outside and say, wait a minute, like I'm part of something. And you see the light bulb go on for some of them sometimes, and it's not easy, but it's the time that you can help them out. The other aspect of our classroom that's more unique probably than anyone is that each one of our students comes every day with at least one or two adult caregivers, child and youth care workers, and they're present with the youth just because of very heightened emotional states that our youth carry, as well as sometimes suicidal ideations and destructive behavior. And so within our classroom, oftentimes we not only are three teachers and 10 students, we are three teachers, 10 students, and about 10 other adults. And so to maximize on that, and for sure the concept of intergenerational groupings, we really do tap into everybody in the room. And as you know, within our country right now, it is the adults that are marching towards learning a new history. Kids are learning about it in school already. They know, and they're not happy about what they're hearing about the residential school system. But it's the adults that are learning about things for the first time, because we didn't learn it in high school, or we didn't learn it in school at all. It was a closed topic. And so what pieces of that brings to the group as well. And like I said, they're just that first group that we had a real connection and a need to know more about treaty, about Indian Act, about what's going on with all of these things and how they came to be. And we break it down. We've taken a look at the treaty documents. We sit there. I printed it off, and we take a look at the original one. You can't read it. Most people can't read it. And so conversation out of that. um, and then what the treaty document actually says, and what obligations are being met today and what aren't being met today. And it really gives kids a sense of power to know these things as they march forward, and no matter where they go, whether they stay with us for a few weeks or months, or they're with us for a few years. We're hoping that we at least can give them that sense of empowerment, of knowledge, of understanding and knowing what has gone on with political aspects, as well as cultural aspects, as well as personal aspects, and how this all comes to be for them to go on to their journeys. They grow up in our program sometimes. They're navigating themselves almost like adults, even as a 14 or 15-year-old in the system.
Yeah, that kind of knowledge is so essential, and you're totally right when you said that even like adults are just learning that now, because it wasn't taught for a very long time, and it wasn't brought up at all. Um, so what do you think is the greatest impact of your project?
I think the greatest impact, it really actually depends on the student. We have some students that are really loving growing things, and they're really loving connecting to that end of things, but also being able to go outside and look at what's on the land, connecting themselves to the land and saying, hey, I know what that plant is. I know what this plant is. Or let's try this plant outside to see what it will do. Um, for others, it's a lot more quiet. They don't want to be as hands-on with things. And sometimes that comes even with what I talked about earlier about um, not having a care for themselves. And it's hard to have a care for other things. So it takes time. It takes time and patience. I think the greatest impact is just being able to offer a differentiated aspect for each of these students, and allowing them to do it in their own time. It's not you need to have you need to have a checklist that you completed all of these things for this project and you'll be getting a mark on it. It's it goes way beyond that. We can pull things out of the curriculum and out of the program of studies, from science, from social studies, from a lot of different areas, to make sure that we have those taken care of. But it's what goes back to each student. Like I said, we also have focused our work on the work of Dr. Martin Brokenleg, and his circle of courage, and the four aspects of mastery, belonging, independence, and generosity, and bringing those four things, as sort of what can we grow for each one of our students in those ways. Currently, our systems, we do great at the mastery part for sure. That's our grades, that's our achievements and all of those kinds of things. But are we doing a good job of fostering independence? Are we doing a good job of fostering generosity? Are we doing a good job at fostering belonging for each one of our students? And these students for sure are way more vulnerable within that, just because they don't go home to a family every night, and they have either jumped around in the system, or they don't know where they do belong, because oftentimes there isn't even a home for them to think of to going back to. And that's a whole other aspect every day when they walk in the classroom. So I think just giving a connection to things, whether it is our classroom, whether it's learning, whether it's caring, and whether it is just the plants themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so important beyond grades, beyond like traditional education systems. Um, so how do you try to keep your students engaged in history? How do you try to make it relevant?
Um, well, it is sometimes sort of walking away from the pages in the textbook, using bits and pieces of it, of really like a mystery or a story. Like I said, the Margaret Pokiak Fenton's book, Fatty Legs, we started that off by just showing the pictures, the real life pictures from that story, and having our students, what do you see here? What's in the pictures? And what do you think's going on? Where is this taking place? All of those kinds of questions. And it was really interesting to hear some of their responses as they're guessing as what kind of story this is going to be and where it's taking place. And it's just taking a step away from reading line after line and paragraph after paragraph in a textbook. It's just being a little bit more creative with what you do. Um, and like I said, kids aren't too young to take a look at a treaty document. Kids aren't too young to understand things about residential schools. Orange Shirt Day, that's a hard day. It's a hard day in our classroom. It's very difficult to talk to kids that have been taken away from their homes about kids that were taken away from their homes, and some died. And but it's important to be truthful about it, and to not wait to tell those things. Or that's one thing about kids that live in government care, is that they need to know. They need to know exactly what's going on all the time. And I think that's only fair, that they understand why things are happening to them, why things are happening in this country, and what has happened. It was even more difficult these past weeks, just before the end of the school year, when for sure the news came out of Kamloops, and now, of course, it's all over the country now, with residential school sites, and common graves being found, with children. And some of our students right now are as young as 10 years old, and they want to know. They want to know what happened to these kids. And it's conversations that you just have to take the time to have, whether it's sitting in desks or whether it's in a circle, where everybody can share how they're feeling about it. I just think that history for sure needs to be explored in different ways, not necessarily the ways that we were taught history. And that's just the acknowledgement of colonization, right? We're all colonized, and it doesn't mean that it was good for all of us. You have to look at what ways does colonization make our systems work right now. And like I said, it's schedules, it's grades, it's achievement, its titles, its status, putting people into groups, labeling them, and what can we do as educators to take a step away from that, just to let kids who are stuck within an institution-based system see things in different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so important bringing history to the present, like you've done. Um, yeah, well, thank you so much for your time.